There's all of this talk about Malcolm and what a great contribution that he made to the Nation of Islam. Yes, he did. He made a great contribution. Nobody knows it better than us. We know what Malcolm did. We were with him. Fellow Minister Captain Yusuf Shah, he told you. When Malcolm came to Philadelphia, he didn't have but 2 suits and nowhere to stay. And I let him stay with me. He lived in my apartment. It was me and another brother by the name of Robert Leo X. We had a little small place and an extra bed. And we allowed Malcolm to stay with us. Malcolm had been sent to Philadelphia by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Messenger Elijah Muhammad sent him to us to help us with the problem. He sent another brother from Baltimore by the name of Isaiah Kareem. He came up. And the 2 of them held the little court at our temple at that time. And when it was all over, Isaiah went back to Baltimore, and Malcolm called the messenger in Chicago and asked him what should he do now that he had solved the problem. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, well, who is there with those believers? And Malcolm said, well, they don't really have a minister here. He said, well, you stay there with them, brother. And that's what Malcolm did. He stayed with us in Philadelphia. And like Brother Captain was saying, he didn't really like work. But he said he was a beef boner, so I took him to a plant where they boned beef. And he got a few days' work cutting up beef. He was pretty good at it, but he didn't like working a full week. 1 or 2 days was enough for him. Then there was another brother named Lewis that worked on the waterfront unloading ships. So he told Malcolm, he said, brother, why don't you come with me down to the waterfront? You can make a lot of money. So he took Malcolm with him down to the waterfront, and he got him hired that day. You know, you give you little kits and things so you can get hired. And when they put that wheelbarrow in Malcolm's hand to start unloading those ships, that was it for him in the waterfront. Oh, he was great for talking. But when it came to work, he didn't have no desire for that whatsoever. So he went for a few days, but when he came in, he fell out for dead. Because he had never had a job. In fact, I never even heard him say he had a job. Except that little railroad job, but I'm talking about work. He didn't like working. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad liked what he was doing. He was doing good work there in Philadelphia, teaching the believers. He taught me a lot of things. I can't say Malcolm was no good. The Malcolm that I met in 1954 was the best brother I had ever known in my life. I loved him, I respected him, because he had a head on him. He was smart. He could think. And I always admired people that could think on their feet. Malcolm did good work. But then he realized that despite his great oratory, he had limitations. And he realized that the group that he was left in charge of didn't have anybody really qualified to handle the kind of problems that he was running into. So when I looked around, he had sent for this brother, Brother Yusuf, Brother Joseph, we called him then. Oh, he was about my size then. I gave him a picture the other day that I had found in my house. I had taken of him. He was standing out in the street with all of us behind him, you know, is FOI, and he had a full head of hair. I mean, thick hair. Somebody handed him the thick, he said, well, who is that? I said, that's you, Yusuf. But he sent for Brother Yusuf because Brother Yusuf knew what to do with other men. And he came to Philadelphia, and by the time he got there, I had a place. I had moved from Malcolm, I had gotten married, and I was living in another house. So then I told him, well, you can come and stay with me. And he came and he stayed with me, and he made me one of his lieutenants, and we ran the FOI there in Philadelphia. And we had a good time there. I learned a lot. What fascinated me about Brother Captain Joseph is this man had a memory that I had never seen before of black people. I mean, he could remember all of them long numbers, I mean, that long. They asked him what was the square mileage of the earth, and he'd come up with those astronomical figures, 196,940,000 square miles. I said, wait a minute, how could he get all of that? I mean, he shocked me, but he won my respect and my admiration. And he even won one of our sisters away from there. He told you about it, and he's still with her. All praises to Allah. So we began to work very, very hard there in the Philadelphia area. Brother Malcolm, Brother Joseph, Brother John Ali, who came over here with Malcolm to become his to become the secretary of number 7. And we built Philadelphia up, and it began to go on its own. And then, as Brother Captain told you, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told Malcolm he could go to New York. Well, Malcolm and I used to come up to New York off and on. He would take all of us over to New York because he liked coming up here. He just loved the big city. And on occasion, Sultan Muhammad would let him teach. But he always said, just what you heard Captain Yusuf say, that he would rather be the assistant minister in New York than to be the full minister in any other city. He wanted New York in the worst kind of way. And so when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told him he could come over here, he ran over here in a hurry. I'll never forget when he got the word, he just threw his stuff in his bag, and more or less, see you, I'm gone. I mean, he left all of us, and he even left Yusuf there. He said, Yusuf, you in charge. You can teach. He left Yusuf there teaching. He made Captain Yusuf an instant minister while he took off and came over here. So, Minister Yusuf, Minister Joseph as we called him then, he hung around for a few days, and he taught 2 or 3 meetings, and then he said, Jeremiah, I'm gone. I'm getting away from here. So he threw his stuff in his bag, and he took off for New York. And the rest you know, because you met him when he came here. But this wasn't an easy task for Malcolm and Brother Captain Yusuf and Brother Secretary John Ali. They had a tough time over here. New York was not made to order for Malcolm. New Yorkers wasn't going to be that easily maneuvered and manipulated because they all thought they were slicker than Detroit Red anyhow. So Malcolm had a problem when he first came here. And we had to come over here frequently. In fact, I was over here so much that most people thought I lived in New York. But we worked with him, and finally he got a grip on New York City with the help of Captain Yusuf. He didn't do it by himself. You know, a lot of you think that Malcolm just did all of this by himself. And that little phony thing they put in the movie about how he came out and waved his hand and everybody vanished, that didn't happen like that. No. I was there. I was working with Captain Yusuf that day when they beat up Johnson Hinton. We all marched around that thing. We marched, must have been 7 or 8 hours. That's right. And the captain said, brother, Malcolm told me that to tell everybody that when we found out that Johnson was out of trouble, that he would come to the front door of the hospital, and when he announced that he was all right, we were all to go to our cars and get away from there. And that's what happened. It's just that we moved so fast, and the devil didn't see how or who it was that was giving the order. So he said, well, Malcolm must have gave some kind of signal. So then they drew up this lie about how he waved his hand. But that didn't happen. Is that right, Brother Captain?
That's true.
I know it's true.
It was in the dead summertime.
That's right. The dead of summer. See, we got the history. I don't know Spike Lee. He never talked to me. In fact, I never seen him in my life. And I don't understand how a man can make a movie about Malcolm and make it 3.5 hours long, and he didn't consult with me. I understand he spoke to you only briefly. Yeah, he spoke to him briefly, but he didn't speak to any of us that knew Malcolm. We knew Malcolm. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad liked what I was doing with the Pittsburgh Courier, and he put me in position to get a job working for the Pittsburgh Courier. And the Pittsburgh Courier newspaper gave me a little traveling money to go around to the different temples. That's right, Jake Gaither, A.D. Gaither. And so Malcolm said, brother, you got this money, you know, this gas money, and let's team up. And that's what we did. We teamed up because I had gas and food money, and I had an old raggedy car, and we'd get in that car and we would go up and down the East Coast, up to Boston, over to Buffalo, all over. We traveled around up until I left Philadelphia and went to Georgia. Even though Malcolm was in, yes.
I got to tell you, sir. Yeah. People got to know this. Took the Pittsburgh Courier from 50,000 to almost 500,000 papers.
That's right. That's what we did. So I used to be with Malcolm night and day, day and night. I knew him. I talked to him all the time. Not only did he live in my house, after he left my house and came over here, I still ran with him. I ran with him until I left here, and when I went to Georgia, he started running with me. Every time I'd look around, he'd be down in Georgia, because he liked to come to Georgia and say, give a speech, and then come back up to New York and put it in the Amsterdam News. Malcolm X invades the South. But that was all right. I didn't mind. I just wish he had been a little kinder to me and said, well, Jeremiah was there too. Because I was there when he got there, and I had to be there after he left. And he used to say some real fiery things, you know. He got me in big trouble once because the airplane crashed, and it had about 150 white people from Georgia on the airplane. And I think he was out in your city, Imam Ali Rashid. He was out in L.A., and somebody handed him a note while he was talking, saying that 150 and 25 Georgia crackers just got killed in an airplane crash. So Malcolm, you know, he was very dramatic. Brothers and sisters, I just got a message from God. He said 120 crackers just got killed over in France. All praises are due Allah. Oh, the place went up in smoke. Yeah! But that made the news. The next day, I'm walking around in Georgia. Cracker come up to me, Jeremiah. They tell me that Malcolm said he was happy about them white folks getting killed in that airplane crash. I said, I don't have nothing to do with that. I said, I didn't say that. I said, I don't know whether Malcolm said it or not, but don't come to me with that. I stood up to white folks down in Georgia. I know you wouldn't believe it, but you're looking at the first and the last black man that ever went to a Ku Klux Klan meeting in Georgia and came out alive. Not only that, Malcolm was at my house when the Klan first came. They came to my house in a 10-car motorcade. And when they pulled down my block, all the blacks on the block got up and ran in the house, ran through the house. I mean, they was getting out of Dodge. So Malcolm and I, we were standing peeping out the window because they had told us they were coming. They wanted to talk to us. So they stopped in front of my door. The lead car did. And all the other cars stopped. Then they looked the house over. A cop pulled up and talked to him. He pulled away, and then they pulled away. But they went around the block and they came back again. So when they came back, a little short Klansman got out of the lead car. I mean, he was really short. He was a little over 4 feet. He came up to the door, rang the bell. I opened it. He looked at me. You Jeremiah? I said, yes, sir. He saw Malcolm standing behind me. He said, you Malcolm? Malcolm, yes, sir. I'm Malcolm. He stood there and said, well, you want to come in? He said, no, I'm not coming in yet. I'm going to tell you niggas something. If I'm not out of here in 15 minutes, we're going to burn this house down. So Malcolm said, you don't have to burn the house down. Just come on in. So he came in. He wouldn't take off his coat or his hat. But he did sit down. So he started talking. Malcolm was sort of, you know, just asking him general questions, you know, who are you, what's your name, this, that, and the other. Then he said that he had to go. In fact, Malcolm kept looking at his watch. And so, in other words, after about 10 minutes had passed, he reminded him, you know, you had better go out and let your brothers know that everything is all right in here. So, he went back out. He came back in. He brought a preacher, a couple of politicians from down South Georgia where Jimmy Carter lived. Some down there near Plains. No, these crackers from Willacoochee, Georgia. Mean crackers. So they came in and we sat around the dining room table. And Malcolm began to talk. They started talking. And they said that, you know, you Muslims don't believe in integration. And, you know, we don't believe in it either. So you know, we ought to get together. So this is a fact. They said we ought to get together. So we need to fight this thing. So that old Martin Luther Coon, he just stirring up things down here. He says that if we get together, we can fight this thing. So Malcolm said, well, what would we be called? He says, he thought about it. He said, we'll call you the Purple Robe. Malcolm said, the Purple Robe? So no, said, we want white robes. So So they say we want white robes. I said, no, say no nigga, you can't let a nigga wear a white robe. So we give you a purple robe. So Malcolm said, no, we don't want no purple robe. So then he kept talking. Then he got around to what he really wanted. And I know this is going to come as a shock to you, but this is true. They say, you know that old Martin Luther King, we can't catch that nigga. So we know he lived around here somewhere, but we don't know where. So now if y'all would just point the nigga out to us, say we'll take care of him. So Malcolm said, oh no, so we don't believe in killing our own people. They said, you don't have to kill the nigga, so we'll take care of the violence. And they were serious. They said, we'll take care of the violence. Malcolm said, no. So we're not going to kill our people. Say, our people have been killed enough. I give him credit. I was sitting right there. And that was one deal that we wasn't going to go for. But if he had gone for it, Martin Luther King wouldn't have lived as long as he lived. But we don't believe in destroying our own kind for the benefit of the white man. In fact, we don't believe in destroying our own kind, period. The only time we would even think about something like that is if you did it first. And when you, as Captain Yusuf told you, you do that to us, then you got a problem. We don't have one, but you got a big one. But the KKK, they kept on talking, telling us how they had beaten up a lot of black people. And then they started talking about Jews and how they had lynched a Jew. There was a Jew that was down in Georgia that had raped a little Gentile white woman, and they had all lynched this Jew, and they thought that was a big thing. They probably lynched a lot of blacks, but they didn't want to say that while they were sitting there with us. But they were talking about how they had lynched Jews and beaten up a whole lot of blacks because the blacks were integrators and they deserved to be beaten. But anyhow, he pulled out his card, and he had a card with a buzzard's claw on it. He said, boy, it's the first time I ever showed a nigga this card. He said, this is our secret arm. See, y'all got a secret group called the FOI, right? So this is our thing, the claw, the KLAW. So then he gave me one of his cards. I asked him for one, he gave it to me. I kept it because whenever I get stopped by them crackers down in Georgia, when I took out my license, I take out that claw card. I give him both of them at the same time. He'd look at me and say, nigga, don't go so fast the next time. You hear me? I said, okay, boss. But living in Georgia during that time was really rough. But I believed in the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I stayed there for almost 7 years. And I got more scratches put on me by black people than I do by them devils. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad told me, said, brother, don't fear him. Said, pray to Allah and ask Allah to take the fear out of you. And he did. And I didn't fear that devil. I stayed there and I went wherever I wanted to go. All in the backwoods, because I used to be the correspondent for Muhammad Speaks. And I used to do stories all in Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. In fact, when the white man broke into our temple in Monroe, Louisiana, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad sent me over there to get our brother Troy Bayard out of jail. The devils had beaten him up, beaten up everybody in the temple. But I want to just digress for a moment and tell you about Troy, because Troy was a real soldier. They broke into that brother's temple down there in Louisiana, beat up men, women, and children. But Troy was a fighter. When they arraigned Troy the next day, they said, this old nigga here kept saying, beat the white devils, beat the white devils. And that made me proud of him. I'm proud of him to this very day, because He is one of those that stood up at a time when nobody else was standing up. That's right. Now you got a whole lot of militant groups running around, but during that time there were no militant groups. Only the Muslims that followed the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. There were no Panthers and no nationalists running around in Georgia and Mississippi and Alabama. I'm telling you what I know. You were not there. No. If you were there, you were picking cotton. You understand? With your head hanging low. You are not Mr. Tough Guy that you are today running around here in New York City. But anyhow, I don't want to stay on Malcolm too long because some of you think that we came here just to bash Malcolm or bash Spike Lee's movie. It's not that, but the man should have checked with people that knew the man so that they could do something authentic, because what they have given you on the screen is a bunch of and the denigration of our great leader and teacher, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I don't like it because I know what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did for Malcolm. He was good to Malcolm in Detroit, in Boston, in Philadelphia, and here in New York. He did things for Malcolm he didn't do for his own children. He bought Malcolm clothes. He bought him his first car, that little 56 Chevy. He bought him another brand new car, that Oldsmobile he had. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad did this for him. That's right. He loved Malcolm. He did everything he could for Malcolm, gave him money, let him travel around. I know, I traveled with him. Gave him authority over his ministers. I was with him when he set Ulysses down in Boston and told Farrakhan, you be the minister. That's how Farrakhan got to be the minister in Boston. Malcolm made him. I was right there. He thanked me because he knew that I was the one that told Malcolm that he ought to give Lewis a break. He didn't have to give it to him because Lewis wasn't a minister. He was, what was he, acting captain? Yes. But Malcolm made him a minister, and he made a good one. He turned out to be one of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's finest ministers. And he's a good minister right today. But I just want you to know that I was there. I was there when a lot of the great events took place. But when it comes to Malcolm and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm knew his place. Malcolm wouldn't have lived as long as he lived had he talked to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad the way they claim he talked to him in that movie. No such thing. No. You didn't raise your voice in the presence of Allah's messenger. No, you watched your mouth. Because one thing about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he never raised his voice to you. No. He always showed you courtesy and respect. He showed it to Malcolm the whole time that Malcolm was with him. The claim that Malcolm challenged him about some illegitimate babies, Malcolm didn't do that. No. He knew better than to interfere or stick his nose or try to make a judgment on the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad wouldn't have tolerated it, and we would never tolerate that kind of conduct coming not only from Malcolm but from anyone who would dare denigrate or disgrace or talk back to our beloved leader and teacher, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm, when he was put out, he begged the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to let him back in. I know he begged him, for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad called me from Georgia out to Phoenix, Arizona, and told me to go into New York. And before I left his house in Phoenix, Malcolm called. And when Malcolm called him, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had just gotten over an attack of asthma. He was wheezing real bad. He said, "Yes, Brother Malcolm, how you doing, brother?" And Malcolm was telling me how well he was doing, and that all of his family was well, and his wife sent the greetings and the usual courtesies and niceties that you engage in on the telephone. Then Malcolm began to tell the Honorable Elijah Muhammad how sorry he was for the mistake he had made in speaking when he was told not to speak. I was sitting right there when he was pleading with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad